Good morning, DC. Welcome into the Blitz. How you doing, sir?
Oh, doing great, Martin. How are you this morning?
Doing great, doing great. Hey, DC, I'm going to continue and wrap up some conversation we were having just before we went to break regarding there's an article by CBS Sports, Ben Kercheval, who talks about the spotting the next Dabo Swinney. I said another feather in the hat of Dabo Swinney and his push, whether it's by media to dethrone Nick Saban. Now they're starting to talk about, instead of the next Nick Saban, the next Dabo Swinney. One of the guys they mentioned was Pete Golding. He was actually, the way they wrote the article, was the first guy listed as the next up-and-coming Saban. What are your thoughts on Pete Golding as a DC?
Well, I think Pete Golding's an up-and-coming coach for sure. Coach Saban wouldn't have got him out of UT San Antonio at such a young age if he didn't see something good in him. So I think he proved his worth to Coach Saban to give him some play calling duties when things weren't working out with Tosh DePoy. So I know Saban thinks highly of him, and I know a few more years under Saban, he'll probably be one of the great defensive minds out there. But right now, I don't see him in that conversation. Just to be honest with you, but I think this article, when you talk, I've read it. I looked at it, I laughed at first when I read it because what you're seeing is they haven't write about the next Dabo Swinney because they've never been able to find the next Nick Saban, and that's not. I'm not being cocky about that. I'm just saying they wrote those articles before. Who's going to be the next Nick Saban? Well, you're not going to find a person out there anymore, I don't think, like Nick Saban. That's just he says it himself. He's cut from a different cloth than he is. They don't make them that way anymore. So when they go looking for the next Dabo Swinney, it's a little they've resigned to the fact, well, we're not going to find the next Nick Saban. And I'm not slighting Dabo Swinney either. Don't get me wrong. I love Dabo Swinney. But let's go back and let's remember how he got to where he was. It was Nick Saban that got Dabo Swinney the job at Clemson in the first place because if you remember the 2008 Chick-fil-A Kickoff Classic, I happened to be there that game, and I watched the number 24 Alabama team just thrash the number 9 Clemson team that had great accolades that year. And Dabo Swinney was not a conversation on anybody's mind at that point for any kind of coaching job. And that thrashing led to Tommy Bowden's resignation mid-year, and Dabo Swinney wasn't hired as the head coach then. He was appointed as the interim coach. So Dabo Swinney worked for what he got, and I don't know that the people on that list will ever measure up to that. So if you're just judging him trying to find the next Dabo Swinney, that's going to be difficult as well because you don't have as many people that get the opportunity to work and prove themselves on the job and get kept and then continue to do that through the year. So I'm not knocking either one of the coaches by what I'm saying. And I'm not knocking Pete Golding. Pete Golding, I think, has time to prove himself, much like Dabo Swinney did. I just don't know that we're at that conversation at this point. I think that's kind of a reach of an article at this point.
I would tend to agree with you on that. Give DC, give Pete Golding a grade for what we were pretty rough on Tosh DePoy. And then we find out that, probably about Arkansas game on, the duties of play calling started to transition. And by the end of the year, Tosh DePoy wasn't the one of the defenses that we were upset about, and it was Pete Golding. Give him a grade, and I understand it's a conditional grade because he took over midseason amongst, I think, some dissension and division. But what grade would you give him?
Yeah, and I think grading him is kind of harsh at this point.
Yeah.
But I will do it. But the reason I say it's harsh, it's hard to have a two-headed monster, even when you think you've put to death the other one, the other one was still there. I'm not trying to think Tosh Boy's a monster. I'm just thinking, one guy in charge is easier to work for than having two, and you try to be loyal to the one or the other, and one calling plays down, one wasn't. So I'm not sure that we had a buy-in of all the defensive personnel at that point. But I would give him a grade of about B- over what he did last year. I'm looking for him to improve on that because I think he's got a lot greater buy-in by the whole defense right now than he ever had last year. So I think he's head and shoulders above where he was last year already, and we haven't even had a formal fall practice yet.
Yeah, you're a little more generous than I am with him. I gave him a C because I thought he actually, I thought he stunk down the stretch, but but also like I said, and I gave that with the condition of what you just described. Division, it's tough to lead when players and personnel are pulling in different directions. And he's probably gonna go up to a B plus just because he has the job and he has the team, and I think he's gonna have more talent than he had last year at a lot of key positions.
And I can see where you give him a C. The reason I give him the B minus is simply because I think during the end of the year when you say he was calling all those bad plays, a lot of it had to do with execution and people just not buying in. I think I go back to what Josh Jacobs said. Josh Jacobs is a pretty good straight shooter, and when he says that we had people that wasn't buying in at the end, that didn't want to play the right way, I think a lot of that was on defense. And I just feel like Pete Gold didn't have a lot to work with toward the end. Not a full, complete team.
All right. Well, DC, one of the things Alabama is doing in the recruiting table in the world is no quarterback in this class right now. Carson Beck decommitted from Alabama and flipped to Georgia. And it appears that all eggs right now are in Bryce Young, the quarterback from California. It looked like all eggs are in his basket. And if that doesn't happen, Alabama may go without signing a quarterback. And when they caught up with Bryce Young at the Elite 11, he seems to put to bed much chance of Alabama getting him. What are your thoughts in terms of Alabama? And do you feel like, as in times past, that this is a mission critical year that Alabama needs to get quarterback, or we'll be okay with the ones we have?
Well, I think that's why we're all the eggs are in the basket on Bryce Young. I don't think it's mission critical to get a quarterback in this class. I think where we're set up right now is potentially we'll have two great quarterbacks redshirted, and barring some kind of injury to Tua. And you got a really good, capable backup in Mac Jones. So I'm not very concerned about that. I'd love to have Bryce Young. I think that's what they're thinking. Hey, if we could flip him, a 5-star from USC, to work with a guy like Sarkisian that he has a great rapport with, a great relationship with, then, hey, we'll take it. We'll make a room for him because that would be a great get. But the absent of that, maybe there's nobody out there that you feel like can upgrade what you have. And why go out and get somebody if you don't feel like they can come in and compete at that level that you've already got? So I think Alabama's a much better place at quarterback than they have been in quite some time, having the number of scholarship players on the roster who actually can compete for starting jobs. So I feel comfortable with Mac Jones. I feel comfortable with Talia and Paul Tyson. I think barring some type of injury, we'll be set up good for the 2020 year. But I believe that Alabama's thinking is, hey, if we can flip the 5-star, get him, Bryce Young, then we'll gladly have him. Be a great coup for us. And Bryce Young's statements are solid. That's what you expect the kid who's got a good character to say. But never say never. It's never done until the name's on the signature, because you don't know what's going to happen at USC between now and then.
Yeah, and I can tell you, if the coach tanks, it definitely opens it up. And a lot of people aren't expecting big things from Helton. So it'll be interesting to see. Another interesting thing about our quarterback position, how often do you have two guys that have walked on? One, the son of all-time one of Alabama's all-time greats, Jay Barker. His son is here. So I know he has some DNA of a competitor and a champion. And then also Jeff George, who's the great from Illinois, and was an all-timer. His son also walked on here. So Alabama they have some, big-time talented guys and some big-time names, or at least the kids that have some DNA. So I'm like you. I think we're all in on this guy, and if we don't get one, then, we know that it's going to be mission critical that we hit a home run next year. But this year is one of those years where we can reach for the fence, and if we don't get it, we'll be okay. So
I agree with you.
All right, DC, a couple quick questions on the Alabama. Yesterday I had a poll question. I'd like to get your thoughts real quick on – I tell you what, let's take those two questions over to the next segment, just 2 football questions. Then we want to talk a little baseball because you said you had an interesting insight on the challenge that we've talked about. James and I have talked about a couple different times here on the Blitz regarding Coach Bohannon and baseball and the struggle it is in baseball with the limited scholarships, especially in the state of Alabama. We'll have that conversation coming up right here on your home for Alabama Sports Talk 102.9 and 100.9. This is the Blitz. I'm Martin Houston. That's James Hardy. We're talking to DC Capstone Report. All right, let's get back to DC Capstone Report. Good morning to Deborah Wilson Queen, listening up in Cummings, Georgia, as a part of the Blitz. DC, as we were going to break, wanted to ask you that question, that couple questions we had yesterday regarding football before we transition to a little baseball talk. Offensive line, I think this year's offensive line is going to be key to the success of this team, which is always key, but I think they definitely will be even more mission critical. And so my first question was, who do you think is going to be the alpha dog? And I put 3 guys out there, and then I put other, and you may have an other as well, but I had Alex Leatherwood, Jedrick Wills, Deontay Brown, or other. Who you think is going to be the alpha dog out of that group?
You know, of those, I think Jedrick Wills is going to be just a phenomenal talent this year. I thought he was great last year, and I think he has potential to be not only the great tackle pass protector, but a great run blocker. And I can just see him making some amazing blocks to open up some of those running backs this year. I just think he has an arm length, the wingspan, and his upper body. I just really feel like he's really increased his power, and so I think he's going to be the alpha dog on the offensive line. I think Alex Leatherwood is a close second. If Deontay Brown comes back and gets his head right, gets back into the swing of things, I've always thought he's a run block mauler. I just think he's the kind of guy. So those 3 guys you can't go wrong with. Outside of them, who's going to step up? I look for Emil Achior maybe to be the one to come in and make a difference early if he gets a chance to come in and play any. So any of those 4, I think, could be the man on the offensive line.
All right, man. I was looking at kind of the lineup and coming out of spring, it was kind of the tackles, Leatherwood and Wheels, and then Owens was pretty solid at center, and the guards play seemed to be kind of where the battle still, resides. And you have Evan Neal and Emil Okior, and you have Womack battling it out. But another guy to me that I just watching him play, I like the way he played. Got a few reps at different times with the first 2 rotation is Darren Dalcourt. And so my follow-up question to that, which one of these freshmen, and I'm including redshirt freshmen, Emil Okior and Evan Neal, Darren Dalcourt, and I'm not going to count out Pierce Quick because of the commitment this young man has had out of Hewitt Trustful and his love for Alabama. Sometimes you just can't count out how hard those guys like that are going to work. Of those guys, which one you see breaking into some playing time potentially this first year?
Well, I think Evan Neal and Delacourt both have the opportunity at the skill level to get some playing time this year. I think both have a big upside. I just wonder. I think the question mark still is their strength and explosiveness off the line. And I think that guard position is really going to be a battle. The fact that you got Womack in there as guard tells you something. I think Coach Saban always wants to put your 5 best out there, even though they may not be specifically a guard. I think having him in the conversation lets everyone know the competition is still open and he's looking for his 5 best players. I'm just not sold on. I love him as a lineman. He's a great tackle. Playing guard for Womack, his pad level, I think, is going to be the biggest obstacle for him to get that in a guard position. But he's definitely a great player as well. So I think he's going to put the best 5 out there, and any of those you mentioned have a chance to make a contribution this year.
Does Landon Dickerson potentially, the transfer from Florida State, does he potentially break in and kind of upset the apple cart as a whole and, cause some movement even with the solid play that we saw from Chris Owens? Does Landon Dickerson possibly even create more opportunities in a different rotation?
Well, I think it creates a lot of competition for sure. It's hard for me to comment on him because I've not seen him much in any stretch of the imagination to give you a great commentary on him because I just haven't seen him. I do know this: they got him for a reason. I think my point is that he brought him in to shore up the depth on the line and for us to play next year. But if he's good enough, like I said, the best 5 is going to play, and it definitely ups the competition.
Absolutely. All right, let's switch over to the diamond. When we were talking, I spoke last night, you said that you have a little insight, you think, into how Coach Bohannon is building this baseball team, because he has a great challenge in the fact that surrounded by lottery states, with the exception of Mississippi, and this supposedly coming, but Mississippi has waive the out-of-state fee and give kids from their surrounding states the ability to come over and not have to pay that extra money. And so not getting a whole lot of help from the state and from the states around him and from his home state. So how does Bohannon go about building this program into a competitive baseball program?
Well, first of all, let me say I think Coach Bohannon, Coach Bo has got it on the right track. I think Alabama fans, true Alabama baseball fans, if we are patient, we're going to see a winning program again at Alabama. I'm excited about what I'm seeing. I looked at the improvement. I've been watching them closely the last couple of years, and just looked at the improvement they had this last year. And I look for, after talking to some of the guys and looking, maybe this next year we improve a little bit. But I'm thinking in the third year with what the recruiting is going on, we might take that big jump of improvement. And the way what I like about it is we're going after some guys that I don't think we've gone after in the past. We're recruiting some guys that have Major League Baseball talent in the draft, getting drafted. I told you, I think in 11 years, I don't think Alabama's had to buy an insurance policy for any of the baseball players. Well, what I mean by that is they haven't been drafted high enough in the draft to get a large contract offer where you have to do that for the player. This year, we had potentially 4, I think, that we were recruiting, 3 of which I think have a potential to sign with Alabama. So, really good. And I think before we relied on local talent and getting who we can because of the scholarship problem. But I think Coach Bohannon is opened up the floodgates, and I've heard that he's recruited as far north as Canada. And I think he has made some inroads there that, we have people even in Canada whose families are looking at coming to play for Coach Bohannon. 1, he's a great guy. And 2, he has a track record of being a great baseball coach. And I think he's trying to build a team any way he can and not just relying on the old ways. One of the coaches, I think the travesty, is not having that paid assistant. I mean, we need that. I don't know why the NCAA doesn't do it in baseball. We need it. We have some great volunteer coaches at Alabama. One I tweeted out yesterday about a recruit who said he was going to sign with Alabama, and I said, don't sleep on Alabama baseball. Coach Bohannon and the other guy I'd like to give a shout-out to is their volunteer coach, Matt Rada. Matt has done a great job on the recruiting trail, and I don't think most of your listeners ever heard of Matt. He's a volunteer coach. He coaches first base. He would be a great paid assistant. We need the NCAA needs to get that moving in the right direction to improve that paying those third assistants. But Alabama has had a disadvantage in the past. I think just thinking within our borders that we can't, and I think we can't compete out there in the recruiting world. And Coach Bohannon has flipped that and said, hey, yes, we can. And going to get those players that wants to come and get them here at Alabama. And I really believe that we're on the up with Alabama baseball. And just like I said, don't sleep on them. I think maybe this next year we might plateau a little bit until we get that third recruiting class in here working out. But that third year, I think we have a potential to really take off and make some moves in the SEC and in the national baseball scene.
Well, DC, a couple things in agreement with you there. First of all, I know the record didn't change very much at all this year, but I think the whole water level for the baseball that was played in the SEC rose a lot, meaning we saw what it was down the stretch. So Alabama was playing week in and week out down the stretch. They were playing against the top, 20 colleges somewhere along the way most of the time, and a lot of times it was the top 10. And so that's number one, is just because you look at the record when you're building a program, that it can cause you to not realize how much progress you've made. So this baseball team this past year was better than the year before, even though the record didn't indicate that very much. The other thing is, I look across the state at what Auburn is returning. 14 of 16 Auburn players are coming back that played in the College World Series. And I know a lot of those guys were guys that he convinced to come play for Auburn. Okay.
All right.
And Auburn's no different than Alabama, and probably doesn't have as much to offer as Alabama in terms of the overall college experience and environment. So I'm in agreement with you, DC. I think Bohannon, if we'll give him the time, give him the support, then you can see Alabama baseball get back to a level it hadn't been at in quite a while.
Well, the interesting thing you said there, Martin, the record hadn't changed last year. But look, if the avid baseball fan watched every game, you saw the team change.
Right.
You don't have to have a progress just to have a record change. What I say by that is, they're in the year past, we would be in a 3-game series against a great SEC team where we didn't play like we didn't have a chance. In these series, we were competing every game and sometimes picked up a win in that third game.
Right.
And so I think that's where you see the difference. Winning 1 out of 3 doesn't sound great, but when you've been used to being swept, when you go on the road and you sweep somebody, that's a big improvement over where we were. So maybe the record didn't change much,
right,
but the attitude and the main thing, he's changed the culture of Alabama baseball, and I think you're going to see that pay dividends, just like it's doing for Auburn now. Coach Bohannon can do the same thing for Alabama down the road. And
DC, we'll carry this conversation over, but because we're going to talk basketball next. I look at this and I am amazed at the mindset that I've heard from Alabama people and former Alabama players and coaches when it comes to recruiting both baseball and basketball. Sometimes saying, "Well, we can't recruit those type of guys," and and that was kind of the thought process even when Saban came. And I think you go after those guys if you're going to build your program, because all it takes is you landing a Colin Sexton or one of these guys that's a top baseball prospect, and all of a sudden your name gets out there, your reputation gets out there, and then you begin to have some success. So I think the fact that he's not sticking with status quo is going to bode well for Bohannon down the recruiting trail, if Alabama fans will give him time to get there.
That's exactly right.
All right, coming back on the other side, we're going to wrap up this edition of the Blitz. We're speaking with DC Capstone Report. You can find it at dccapstonereport.com. All right, let's get back to DC Capstone Report. DC, give an update on what you got coming up, and then we'll get into this basketball conversation.
Well, next week, we've been on a little hiatus. Next week, we're going to start back the podcast, doing a preview of the upcoming SEC Media Days and kind of kicking off our preview of the Alabama football heading into fall practice and into the game. So we're looking forward to that, to being back in the saddle again. Lance is going to be putting up some videos, and of course, he'll be having some good things that leading up to the season. So look forward to getting back in the saddle next week. You can catch it on dccapstonereport.com. Check out our Facebook page, DC Capstone Report, or you can follow me on Twitter at DavidCott50, at DavidCott50.
All right, DC, when we look at Alabama basketball, how big a deal is it, the Kyra Lewis Jr. story? When you look at what Nate Oates is doing, how big a story is that he made the men's U.S. under-19 team?
Oh, I think it's an amazing story, big story. I think Nate Oates came in immediately, identified Kyra Lewis as the guy that he wanted to take, that he wanted to get, and he came in immediately and decided, hey, I'm going to keep this guy. And you see now why the talent level is just amazing in Kyle Lewis, and what he's able to do on that stage is great for Alabama basketball.
All right. Now, you said you had a little insight about the summer workouts and how they were going. Yesterday we had C.J. Watson on, and we talked about that Alabama probably just conditioning alone probably left 3 to 5 wins on the table.
No doubt. And I'm telling you, I think Alabama was in the poorest shape of any of the basketball programs I've seen in quite some time in Alabama this past year. And I think we have upped that so much. We have just. I don't believe that you'll be able to recognize some of the players and the way they play this next year because of just the conditioning. And I've seen some of the practices. I've heard people that's been there, and I'm excited because it looks like to me we're going to be able to compete at a much higher level this coming year just based on our conditioning. Another thing I'm excited about is just the people, the former players that are coming back and speaking out, that's been invited back, that's got to go see. We got them from players that played for Coach Sanderson to players that played for Coach Godfrey, players that played for Coach Johnson last year, and they all in between. I mean, just players coming back and saying, hey, I've never seen an Alabama player so in a practice so tough, practice so hard, or players that are really invested and engaged in the process. So I think Nate Oates has something really good going on. I think it's going to be even better when he gets transitioned here. I understand he moved it last weekend or this week to get here and to be able to have his family here with him, and to be able to. I think it's big on getting the players together at his house and that camaraderie. That's one of the things I think people have really not even thought about, how great Nick Saban has done with the football team. Get them in a family environment at his house, that sort of thing. That's going to be big for Nate Oates. So I'm looking forward to this Alabama basketball team. I think we have a potentially to see, just a really great first year from this Alabama team. And
you just hit something, and we can talk about this more, DC. But nobody is shy. I'm not going to shy away from. Coach Johnson's wife was never really bought into this program, never really a part. And Nate Oates' wife, I think that high school background makes her a lot like Miss Saban. They believe in that mothering role that the coach's wife many times plays, and I think that's going to be huge for Coach Oates in terms of building this program, connecting the players, and bringing that family atmosphere you were just referring to. One quick question as I let you go. DC, when you look at this, I know we talked about conditioning, and a lot of times we're talking about just from the heart standpoint. Are these guys getting physically more fit, like from a muscle standpoint, a strength standpoint, and a physicality standpoint?
Most definitely. If you don't believe it, look at a picture of Javion Davis-Fleming before and after, and look at his body, look at his physique. I think they're getting much stronger, and I think they need that to compete. We're talking about a team that's going to throw up a lot of outside shots, going to need a lot of offensive rebounds. We need that on the inside. So I look forward to seeing their physiques change and the strength change as well.
All right, that's DC, DCCapstoneReport.com. Going to be back up and at him next week, and also looking at following him at David Cott 50. David Cott 50 is where you can find him on Twitter. Thanks, DC. We'll catch up with you next week.
Thanks, Mark.